it fixed itself.
Okay.
Yeah, we're back live. I don't know what happened. It just stopped working for a second, but we're back.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So let's talk about some classy comic book weddings, things that went well. Um, what's a comic book wedding that you guys like?
Like Bert said, Superman and Lois Lane and Spider-Man and Mary Jane.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean,
are
the
my
image it's showing right now basically captures the good and the bad about it. On the left, Peter Parker and Mary Jane, that mattered a lot. On the right, Marvel, I mean, this just wasn't that big of an event. North Star and then that other guy who did nothing in this universe.
I think his name's
I
Kyle.
mean, yeah, sure, Kyle. But this isn't really. I mean, it's not really a plot twist. Everybody knew North Star was a gay character, but they threw it on the cover and even featured it in this issue just so that Marvel could say, they had the first gay wedding, in a major comic book, and um, just I feel like another cash grab, another of those plot twists.
yeah,
Yeah,
not very
back,
tasteful either. Like they just did it to be the first to do it.
and
Right,
back when that came out, it was like right around when all of that court drama was happening with gay marriage and stuff. So again, yeah, just a cash grab, I think. But
right.
still,
I'm gonna go back and talk a little bit about the Deadpool wedding. So I think I've made it no surprise that I don't really like the idea of what Deadpool has become in the last couple of years. And what they're doing to this character, and what they've continued to do for the last 8 years, 9 years around Deadpool, has been turn him into basically a gigantic goofball laughing stock of the Marvel Universe. When he was, I've talked about this in the past. When he was introduced, he was a cold and ruthless killer who was kind of snide. Like he made these offhand comments. And what really made him popular was when they decided to let him break the fourth wall, meaning that Deadpool is the only comic book character in the Marvel universe that can talk to the actual audience, meaning the people that are reading the comic book, which was a cool premise until they took it too far. And now he's a chimichanga eating video game character that, makes dick and fart jokes nonstop. And there's a couple writers that have handled him really well in the past. And Marvel's doing the smart thing, I guess, business wise, by putting his name you know, on T-shirts and pictures of him punching sharks and doing other ridiculous crap and giving him five or six new. I mean, think about the last 2 years. He's had Deadpool kills the Marvel universe, Night of the Living Deadpool, Deadpool the series, Cable and Deadpool. He's been in Uncanny, like he's just been in so many titles. Deadpool Illustrated, like all these different stupid, goofy projects that like are selling copies, but they're ruining a character that used to be something. I thought something more, and I
Not
think
even that long ago. I mean, when
if
he
you
was in
guys
Rick
look at
Remender's
yeah,
Uncanny X, he was
yeah,
awesome.
if you look in there, they make him this. I mean, he has a sense of morality. He does the right thing. He's a good anti-hero in X-Force when Rick Remender writes him, but the rest of the Marvel universe treats him like, he's a Tom and Jerry character, and they drop anvils on him and stuff, and he just doesn't fit. So putting him in a scenario where he's going to get married and they're going to lift up that veil and it's going to be like a giant taco or something that he marries is going to be stupid. And like they're slowly but surely saturating the market with a character, and they're killing him.
Yeah.
And like you can't bring a character like when he's this deep, you're not going to have a chance of bringing him back unless you stop all the shenanigans and silliness. Like it wouldn't surprise me to see him get his own animated television show where he just like throws anvils on people's heads and slips on banana peels all day. But I mean, that's my semi rant for Deadpool. But I think they're killing him. I don't like the idea of the wedding. I don't like the idea of most comic book weddings that haven't been properly built up for a very long time. It's
Right.
it's it's a stupid concept. It's a cash grab, and unfortunately, it's gonna sell a lot of copies, and it's gonna only strengthen the fact that Marvel can do stupid crap like this with their best properties. So, Good job, Marvel. You're killing your own business.
I think
Any,
to be fair, I don't really blame Marvel. I mean everybody else. And if people weren't buying it, they'd probably stop. The sad truth is that a lot of these dumb Deadpool books probably outsold even Uncanny X-Force, in which he had a ton of character. It was actually one of the deeper characters made available to you in that book. Like you said, he had a bizarre sense of morality that we haven't seen in that character since almost forever. And then
when
the
he
book
was when
sold,
he
sold
was in
pretty
the
well.
old Wolverine, he was in the old Wolverine titles in the '90s, and he was awesome. That's when I fell in love with him. Like he would say little goofy stuff, but like then he would just go out and he'd shoot people and stab people, and he'd fight Wolverine for like 15 issues, and the art was awesome. And now it's just goofy. I just don't like it anymore. Um, I'm gonna move along because I'm just gonna keep ranting, and I don't think I need to do that.
Mhm.
So, the next thing we're going to talk about is another thing that I think is ruining the current comic book industry, because it's really started to take hold in the last year, and that is Marvel, DC, Image, these companies releasing solicitations for their books months and months and months in advance. So, what a solicitation is basically a vendor issued preview of a comic book that they give to the public, and they give to comic book retailers, so that comic book retailers can decide how many issues of a copy they think are worth buying. Now, most recently in the news, two different things have been outed that are major
Major.
plot holes, or
One
like
mark.
Uh,
they when they announced that the Amazing Spider-Man was being rebooted in April, it killed all the momentum of Superior Spider-Man and pretty much removed all anxiety there that was associated with reading that book, which was an awesome book up until that point. And DC, on the opposite side of things, just announced that after Forever Evil, Lex Luthor will be running the Justice League. So that's also another huge, ridiculous piece of news that should not have been known to the public until after that arc was over. So let's take it in stride here, and we'll start with Amazing Spider-Man. We've talked about it a little bit before, so hopefully we won't have to talk about it forever. But what do you guys feel? I mean, was this was ruined for you, or what?
Yeah,
I
both
mean,
books were ruined for me. We
yeah.
talked about Spider-Man like for 17 weeks straight. So I think everybody knows how I feel about Spider-Man, and the Justice League thing was really cool, and the whole story was awesome. And then they're just like, "Here's what happens," and you're like, "Oh, well, I guess I don't have to read until that actually happens."
And it's just really annoying because you get so invested in a book, you get so invested in seeing what happens next, you get excited for the cliffhangers at the end of issues, and then they go and do something like this. Like it kind of it kind of sucks. It doesn't kind of suck. It really
Super
sucks that
sucks.
every time I get invested in something, they just ruin it for me, and I kind of just get uninterested.
I don't know
It's
why in these previews they have to show like artwork like the one we have on the right here. Why did you have to show that picture? Why couldn't you just be like the conclusion to this epic story
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
or you could have said something like, "A shocking new Justice League is formed," and you
Right.
don't have to notice, because like I do want to, just to skip Spider-Man for the sense of skipping Spider-Man because we talk about him so frequently. I'm going to talk about the Justice League, but if you look at this picture, a couple things stand out to me. The current Justice League, or the Justice League that New 52 launched with, was Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Green Lantern, Cyborg. That was the team. Now it's looks like there's no Superman in this picture. So where the hell is he at? Because that pisses me off, because he's my favorite character. So I don't know where he's at. Is he not in the Justice League anymore? Does he like get killed, or do they do something with him? Where, because they just canceled another. And we'll talk about that in a second. Sorry, but and Green Lantern isn't obviously hasn't been on the team for the last couple issues because he's handling stuff being a space cop. But like you have Captain Cold in there, who, for all accounts and purposes, Captain Cold is a C-list villain who his powers are based on whether or not he has a gun in his hand. He doesn't have any other powers after that. He's literally he's like a B if you're gonna come to me and you're gonna go, who's the coolest character in DC with freezing capabilities? Mr. Freeze is that character. Captain Cold doesn't even come into the equation. So
Let me
you
repeat.
have
Well, I mean, recently Captain Cold had actually Captain Cold powers, and he could freeze people with his hands and stuff. But
That's true.
But that
just
was dumb.
recently, he got the gun back.
It was kind of dumb.
Captain Cold, especially in the pre-New 52 series, was actually, I think, one of the Flash's coolest villains. He's a pretty torn villain. He's
I started
more of
ranting
an
and I
anti-hero, more of an
apologize.
anti-villain, I guess.
I didn't mean to
It's
rip
hard to
Captain
characterize.
Cold. I didn't mean to rip Captain Cold a new one, but like it's like he's photoshopped in there. Like who put Captain Cold in there? Come on. Like it's enough. Like you have Shazam in there, who's already has most of the same powers as Superman. He was a blatant ripoff of Superman when he first came out. So it's cool to have a Superman-like figure in there. And I can imagine that if Superman isn't in, if Lex Luthor's in the Justice League, then Superman obviously would not be, just due to the fact that they freaking hate each other. But it's going to be interesting to see where they go with this. But the fact remains is that they ruined something that could have been cool. It could have been a cool reveal.
Right.
It could have been something. And now, instead of letting it
reveal.
unveil naturally and letting there be an explosion of fans going, oh my gosh, what's going on with Justice League? Now it's just like, well, I guess I gotta wait until April to figure out what kind of crap story they throw together to put Lex Luthor in the Justice League. But I mean, it is what it is at this point. So now we just have to hang on and wait for the ride and figure out why Lex Luthor is running the
I'll just
Justice
say
League.
that I'm actually excited that Captain Cold is in the Justice League. I couldn't care
We've
about Lex
moved
Luthor.
past Captain Cold.
You've moved past it. We have to go back.
I mean, I enjoy the shakeup that's going on in the Justice League. I just didn't want to know about it prior to the end of Forever Evil. Like, I don't want to know about it right now. We shouldn't even be having this discussion. It's annoying.
It is annoying.
And another thing they ruined, Wally West is coming to the New 52 finally. And
Yeah.
they
That
ruined
would have been an
as well.
awesome reveal too. Yeah, you're right. These people.
Well, yeah. So I mean, there you go. I mean, it's not just this book. I mean, these two books. It's a common trend that you're seeing in DC and in Marvel, where they're ending series, they're relaunching series, they're giving all these advance notices to people so they know what to stockpile their money away for to buy variant covers for stuff, but they're not letting the stories unfold naturally. It's like if you watched a trailer for an episode of a television series before the episode played. Like, they have next week's trailer before this week's episode. So, like, why would you do that? You don't need to don't give me a preview for a movie that's coming out, before I watch, the movie that preceded it. It doesn't make any sense to me. So we'll move on from there because I keep ranting and I apologize. We're going to move on to another topic that we wanted to discuss for a while, and we're probably going to run over our time limit because this is going to be
We have like 6
probably
minutes left.
yeah, it's going to be this is going to be our lengthiest portion of the discussion so far. We want to talk a little bit about. We talk primarily about DC and Marvel on here because that's what the vast majority of people who don't aggressively collect comic books like most of the comic book people we know do. Most people identify with those characters. They know of them, that they have some relevance to the character. They've seen them out there. A lot of people don't know about the other comic book publishers, and those guys, the biggest one of them, and the one that we want to talk about the most is probably Image Comics. Image Comics was founded by Todd McFarlane in the early 90s when him and a bunch of other writers and authors were tired of getting pushed around by the big two, being Marvel and DC. And they formed this company with the premise that, hey, we're going to let you write your own books, we're not going to mess with your content at all, and we'll let you own the series and the profits from it. We'll just publish it, under this Image banner. And from there, you had a lot of other, similar business models with things like Dark Horse, Valiant, and even to some extent in the past Vertigo. And some of the best books that are being written in comics right now are coming from these companies. And they're not getting as much exposure. And we kind of wanted to talk about some books here and we'll talk about them in a few minutes after our main discussion point here, that maybe are flying under your radar. A lot of people have been asking us, hey, what should we read that isn't from DC and Marvel? So we'll get to some titles that maybe you guys can check out that you'll really dig. What do you guys think are some of the main advantages or disadvantages of the creator-owned content world in Image Comics and some of these other titles, these other publishers?
I think the biggest I'll go first. I think the biggest advantage disadvantage combo. So whenever you write for a larger publisher like Marvel or DC, you get to write for characters who exist in an established universe. And for readers, you show up to these books knowing what to expect. You know you're going to be given access to characters that you have been reading or have heard of or at least encountered when you were a kid. So there's always something familiar there. You can follow characters literally your entire life. I mean, I've been reading Spider-Man as long as I can remember. And that's a huge advantage to me. And I think that sticks around for pretty much everyone. I know you, Nick, read Spawn throughout your life until they ruined that for you.
Yeah.
But it's a huge advantage.
Spawn was a product of the '90s, and he was destined to fail. But
that's fine. Yeah, but no, I think that's huge. But when you move to I guess that advantage for an audience is kind of a huge disadvantage to the artists and authors. Since those stories those stories are kind of established, and there are rules to those stories, and you're forced most of the time to follow them. I know we kind of the first PopCon Garrett and I had gone to, we drank a little bit and we talked about this with some comic book authors and artists, and that seemed to be a big sticking point for them. A lot of them seem to hate getting kind of stuck in to these books and not being allowed to change things or control their characters. They seem to question, at least drunk, how much control they really had over their book at all. And
look at Action Comics. Look at Action Comics. Since it's been released, it can't hold an author down other than Grant Morrison. Now, DC gave Grant Morrison a lot of leeway with the title because he's Grant Morrison, and in their eyes, he can do no wrong, even though I hate him. But he, they had Tony Daniels and they had a couple other people on the hook for this book, and they just quit because of how much pressure DC put on them to write the Superman stories that DC wanted to see and not the stories that they wanted to tell. And when you run into this Big Brother is always watching and editing your things, then unless you've really proven yourself in the eyes of DC or Marvel, you don't really have any real leeway. I know a couple different authors, like Chris said, that we've talked to, they feel that their books were sabotaged from the get-go because they couldn't write the stories that they wanted to. Jordan, Garrett, you have any thoughts on it?
Jordan, you can go ahead.
I mean, that's basically about everything that I was going to say. I mean, I feel like with creator-owned content, you get a more fleshed out story. You get everything that the author really wants to say, everything that they really want to tell with their stories, and stories that are, in my opinion, usually a bit more personal than what you get when you're dealing with Marvel and DC. I mean, when you're dealing with them, you're always under pressure. You always have the fear of like a Marvel or a DC bigwig calling up and saying, "Oh, hey, we need you to kill off your character," or something like that. So things in creator-owned content, just generally, I feel are a little bit more complete.
Well, I think too, with creator-controlled content, you're at least guaranteed to get to read something relatively fresh, which is always nice. You get access to characters that may have never had an opportunity to exist in a larger, more established universe.
Let's talk about some books that we can recommend to people to read. We've all sat down and we've kind of picked a book out that we wanted to recommend that comes from a publisher that isn't DC or Marvel, because we do read a lot of titles that aren't by those guys. Jordan, you want to take it away with your pick?
Yeah, my pick is Skyman. It's penned by Joshua Hale. I can never say his last name. I think it's Fialkov. I don't know how to say it. But anyway, he's also writing a couple books for Marvel's Cataclysm event right now, and that's really what drew me towards Skyman because I'm enjoying those Marvel books. Skyman focuses on Eric Reed. He's an ex-pilot who was injured during a mission. He's recruited by the government to become Skyman. Kind of a Captain America-like kind of story, at least his beginnings. The book so far deals with some elements that you usually don't see in comics, where Skyman is the superhero that's completely funded by the government, and where his race kind of plays a really central role in why he's chosen. The writing's pretty good. You get invested in a story pretty quickly, and that's what's kept me reading, and what's going to probably keep me reading throughout the entire miniseries, which I think right now is only going to be 5 issues. The art's a little off. I'm not a big fan of that, but the story is good enough that I can definitely recommend it.
Awesome.
Cool. That's a title that I wanna look into, but I just haven't got a chance to with the 97 other titles that I'm reading. So Jordan's recommendation is Skyman, that's a Dark Horse title, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Dark Horse. Cool. So check it out, Skyman. I think it's only on issue number 2 right now, so it's relatively new. You should be able to walk into a store and find it, or go on eBay and find it or something like that. Mr. Garrett Gilmore, you're very studly. What's your pick?
My pick for this week is Deadly Class, which is written by Rick Remender and the artist by Wes Craig. And the art is amazing, by the way. It's just as good as the story. Both are just really high caliber, in my opinion. It's a story that's based in 1980s San Francisco, about a school of assassins. And Rick Remender really shows like the darker tones of San Francisco, and the main character Marcus is a really engaging character right from the get-go. It's only 1 issue in right now, but I can just tell that it's going to be a great series, and I'm going to keep reading it for sure.
It's one of those books, in my opinion, that if you look at it and you look at the way that television's going right now, I can totally see this being turned into a television show or a film or a mini series of some kind. Image has a really weird track record with producing like television shows out of their properties,
Yeah.
because it's creator controlled. This, for some reason, this to me is one of those books where I feel like, get it now, pick it up, buy a copy, buy 2 copies, and put it away, because it's going to accrue value. Somebody's going to pick up this property, and it's like a darker, edgier, kick-ass kind of a title where you're gonna want to own this book when it's made into something, and the value of that book shoots up.
For sure.
Christoph Guggenheim Bird, your title that you
Who
picked,
told you my middle name?
your birth certificate, which I used to open a credit card in your name. Your
Okay.
title, go for it.
So I chose a book that Nick here and I think both read for a while. I don't know if you're still reading it or not, Nick, but Peter Panzerfaust, which is a title put out by Image Comics. It's written by a gentleman named Curtis Vibe. I'm not sure if that's a Germanic W or not. Peter Panzerfaust, if the name doesn't kind of give it away, is a semi-modern retelling of the Peter Pan story, but rather than having been set in like Neverland or in the London of the 40s or whatever, it instead takes place during World War II, and they've replaced most of those characters with appropriate versions like Captain Hook. Captain Hook is a German, I think he's a lieutenant, who loses his hand in an encounter with Peter. And it's awesome. I mean, it's kind of a coming of age story in the same vein that the Peter Pan had been when it first released, but with a pretty fascinating twist. And it's been wildly consistent. I cannot recommend enough picking up this book.
Another thing to bring up about this is that BBC optioned to make this into a television series, and the value of the first couple issues of that comic book shot up through the roof. So
Yeah.
not only, I mean, I downloaded the digital copies of it to read it, and it floored me how well it's written. And I mean, I'm a huge fan of Peter Pan in general. I grew up on movies like the Walt Disney Peter Pan movie and the Steven Spielberg movie Hook, which is like one of my favorite movies ever of all time. So I was really interested to see this take on the character, and they do an awesome job. They they make Peter. I mean, Peter's an American in the book, and he's very selfless, and it's just cool to see the way that they represent characters like Wendy and Toodles and Captain Hook and all these other people. And they even make small references to other things like thimbles and teddy bears and just different aspects of the mythos that is the Peter Pan
Peter
universe.
Pan.
Check it out. I mean, you can pick up the trade paperback and get like everything that's in there for like 10 or 15 bucks, and you won't regret it. It's awesome.
They've also released a deluxe hardcover edition that collects the first trade or two, which looks really cool. I feel like to spend a lot of money on really neat stuff.
It's told through a series of flashbacks too. So it's kind of like a guy. It's kind of like your grandfather being like, "I remember when I was a boy, we used to all kill Nazis." Like, but it's really cool. It's just a good book. Anywho, my book that I picked is called Black Science. It is written by one of my favorite writers, Rick Remender, who's given us some of the best books in the last couple years. Uncanny X-Force, which Chris Bird turned me on to, which I really liked. Captain America, Uncanny Avengers. He's writing. He's got a couple other books out there that he wrote the first couple issues of the relaunch of Venom, and those were really good. But Black Science is one of his creator-owned books. It just started. They're on about to be on issue 3, so you can go out there and find it. Issue 2 is a little hard to get because it was a super low run printing, so you might pay a little bit more for that. But the story, so here's why I like Black Science. I'll give you the premise of the story, and then I'll tell you why I like it. The premise of the story is that this guy created a device that teleports these characters in the story to different worlds, or different dimensions. You can call them dimensions, and it's a society that's based off of science, but there's rules to the science that you're not allowed to break, and the main character essentially breaks them, because why wouldn't he? There wouldn't be a comic without that. And it starts transporting them to these different dimensions, and they kind of have to run with it. But the reason I like it is because I'm a huge sucker for shows like Quantum Leap and Sliders and things like that. I love movies, like even things like Groundhog Day, where people are trapped in these scenarios and they're just trying to get home, like Land of the Lost and things like that, where they've made their bed and now they have to lie in it. They're spending all this time and energy like running away from monsters and what have you, and they're trying to get back home. And it's a really cool premise, but it's also freaking brutal. It's the first issue was given a perfect 10 by IGN, which only happens like maybe once a year, once every couple years. So I don't know if I would have given it a full perfect 10, but it's definitely a good book. The art is solid. It's by Matteo Solara, so he's an awesome artist. The coloring really makes the book too. It's colored in a way that like everything pops, everything shines. It's very aesthetically pleasing. Is anybody else checking this book out?
Oh, well, I just looked it up on Amazon, and the first 4, the results are pretty solid.
Yeah.
It's a two-way tie between Black Science issue number 1 and Black Science: Ancient and Modern Techniques of Ninja Mind Manipulation, which I want to say might be the stronger book, if I can say that.
Pick them both up. Why not?
Yeah. Cool. All right, so those are our titles that we recommend. So just to recap the books again, Skyman, which is a Dark Horse title, was recommended by Jordan. That's only on issue number 2 right now, so you should be able to pick it up. Deadly Class was recommended by Garrett. That's written by Rick Remender also. So if you go out there, you check it out. It's basically the premises. It's a school of assassins, and you have to, they're a high school for assassin kids. It's pretty sweet. It's only on issue number 1, so it should be really cool, really easy to pick up. Peter Panzerfaust was recommended by Chris Bird. Awesome title. Go out there, pick it up. There's absolutely positively no way you're going to find the first 4 or 5 issues of this without having a spare $1,000 laying around in your house. And The last book is Black Science by Rick Remender, which is Quantum Leap and like the Abyss rolled into one. It's really weird, but it's a cool title as well. It's also by Rick Remender. That's only on issue 2, so you should be able to find that relatively easy. Um, it's I think it's important to touch back on these creator-owned comics or these smaller publishers. You know, companies like Image give a lot of, I mean, 100% freedom to their artists, and they just posted record-breaking numbers this last year with issues sold. Image is also the company that produces The Walking Dead, which is a huge television series for AMC, and issue number 115 of The Walking Dead was the number one best-selling comic book of this entire year by a huge landslide margin. So it sold a lot. It just goes to show how some of these companies like Dark Horse and Vertigo and Valiant, who produces like Exo Manowar and Unity and Shadow Man and Harbinger, a couple other titles, these books might be flying under your radar, but they're awesome books. Chances are, if you're in a comic book store and you're talking to the Chris Birds, the curmudgeon comic book store guys that intimidate people with their like, oh, you shouldn't read that kind of attitude, chances are they're going to recommend.
Incredibly charming.
Yeah, they're going to recommend you something from Image or Valiant or Dark Horse. So check it out, give it a shot. Their books typically tend to be cheaper too, which is nice. So that's about it. Do you guys have anything else on the creator-owned subject here?
One thing I wanted to add is when me and Bird went to C2E2 last year, we had the privilege to talk to a bunch of the CEOs and heads of these companies, and they're actually really, really nice guys. Like, every single one of them was asking the dealers, how can we improve, how can we get better, and they're always looking to get their stuff out there and more well known. So if you guys support these guys, it'll be worth it. They're really into giving back to their fans and everybody that reads their books. So I highly recommend picking up some of their books.
We want to take a couple minutes here to answer some questions. So last week we had a lot of good response with this, and we drove a lot of good dialogue out of here. So go ahead and launch your questions at us again, because we had a really good time answering questions last week. And the best question of this week will give a copy of Deadly Class number 1 too. So whether you're around where we're at or in the middle of Utah, we'll find a way to get it to you. So let us know. So far, anybody have anything on there that they want to ask us? I know I've seen a lot of different questions on here. I just really don't feel like going back through and looking for them.
Yeah, the chat has been popping today, so it's kind of hard to lock down all the questions, but I wrote some down. I didn't get the names of the people that asked them, but the first question that was asked right at the beginning was, do we have any story arcs that are now in trade paperbacks that we would suggest for people to read, just as like a one-shot thing, from beginning to end?
Yeah, read the first 2 volumes of the newest Daredevil. It deals with Daredevil's essentially an attack on Daredevil's entire life, and it makes him think that he's crazy. It's a freaking awesome story. Mark Waid's Daredevil book is one of my favorite comic books for the last 10 years. It's written really well. It's won Eisner Awards. It's an awesome book. I'm pissed that it's ending next month. So check out that book if you can find it. If you can find the trade paperbacks for that. So
let me answer the most important question that was just asked about Guardians of the Galaxy, because I think we all want to know, since that film is coming out. So definitely, if you want to start reading Guardians of the Galaxy and want to read a complete story that will likely be involved in some way with the Marvel movie, you've got 2 options. So you can read the current Marvel Now arc. That's pretty good. It's okay. The costumes are a little dumb, but the actual writing is solid, and it's far more likely that the movie's going to be based off of that than it will be. Well, not really the original, but I think the better story, and the one that you should read, which is Dan Abnett's Guardians of the Galaxy. I think that came out in 2008. That story is awesome. I think if anything made the Guardians of the Galaxy, I identifiable characters, or a book that was worth reading that people took notice of, it was definitely the Dan Abnett book. It's awesome. It ties in with like the Annihilation Conquest crap, which got a little convoluted, but it's a ton of fun. Rocket Raccoon is freaking awesome in that. Groot's a solid guy too. That's the one. So Dan Abnett's Guardians of the Galaxy. The trade paperbacks can actually be a little bit hard to find. And even if you do find them, sometimes they're kind of expensive, especially after the announcement of this movie. So I don't always suggest looking for digital copies, but this might be the book for that.
Yeah.
Bam.
That Marvel Now art's not.
We're done.
Jeez. A little rude.
I was just gonna say it's not terribly far along, so you wouldn't have a lot catching up to do.
Right. That's true.
The only other question that's in the chat right now is who do we think is going to be Deadpool's wife? And Nick already said that it's going to be a taco, so I'll say
Probably
a
gonna be
pancake.
Gilbert Gottfried,
Yeah,
apparently.
Gilbert Gottfried also is a solid choice.
I think it's going to be Deadpool.
You think Deadpool's going to marry himself?
Yeah. Because, it's exactly the dumb kind of crap they do with that character right now.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be a surprise to me if they had him marry himself, or like a mannequin or Stanley or somebody. Like they're gonna make it somebody stupid. It's gonna be dumb. It'll have no lasting consequences on the character other than to further push me away from him forever. I don't feel like I'm ever gonna go back to that the Deadpool I knew and liked growing up.
Actually, I was just thinking we have a lot of people, including yourself, and in this chat that really like Superman. So a solid series for Superman fans, this just came to mind, is Mark Waid's Irredeemable. I think, Nick, you were trying to track this down a little while ago. I think they've collected like the first 8 volumes in trade paperback form, and it's still going, so you would have some catching up to do. But this is basically a story about the character's not actually Superman, but it's functionally the story of Superman if he weren't emotionally developed or capable of dealing with all the shit and all the criticism Superman gets for being an alien, for being the only one of his kind, for being untrustworthy solely because of his godlike powers. So this is the story of that Superman if he couldn't deal with that shit, and so just begins to slaughter the people of Earth, which sounds pretty brutal, and it totally is. But it's a cool story, and I think really
Sounds a lot like Invincible.
Yeah, in some ways, there are some differences. This character starts out totally good, just like the character's dad in Invincible, but he just kind of cracks. Something goes wrong, and so he just starts to kill. In Invincible, it was his mission all along to kind of subdue the planet of Earth and be a total douche. So,
Someone asked, "Who don't you want to see in the Batman vs Superman movie?" My
Batman.
response to that is anybody that isn't Batman or Superman. Like, give them the limelight, let them do their thing, and build a universe outside of that.
I know it's already been confirmed, so I can't stop it now, but I actually don't want to see Wonder Woman in this movie. I don't think there's enough room. Superman and Batman are, to be fair, combined with Wonder Woman, some of the biggest players in this universe. One movie isn't enough for just those two characters. I think it's too much.
I agree with you.
I also think they all three deserve their own movies, and Wonder Woman will not have that at this point. I guess this Batman won't either, but we all get the idea. We've met him.
Well, I mean, I guess this is kind of his movie. They're just rushing to get the Justice League movie, so whatever works for them.
Cool. All right. Any other questions we have for today?
I don't see any. I could have missed some, but if we missed any, you can type them out real quick and maybe we could get to them, but I don't see any.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's about it. So we'll decide as a team who wins the prize for today, and we'll let you guys know via the Facebook page, so keep in touch on there. Last thing we'll say on here is, again, thanks for all the support. A lot of similar, a lot of the same people showing up week after week, and we appreciate your guys' support more than you're aware of. There's a lot of time it takes to get this stuff together, even though we joke around about it, and it's fun for us, and we're going to hopefully try to get more people out there, get more people involved in the process, get more viewers, get more interaction, and eventually have a bigger audience and better production values. So thank you guys again for helping us out. We didn't have any sponsors this week, so it's all self-funded. So if you guys want to make a donation to us, down at the bottom, the donate for Deadpool button. Click it. Give us $1,000. That's fair. $1,000
Each.
And then each.
Yeah, that's not total. It's cheap.
And then that's all I really have. So again, guys, thanks for all the support, and support your local comic book store.